It's a replay of last year's grand final with minor premiers University going into tomorrow's decider a firm favourite.
In our last 5 encounters, they've beaten us 4 times. We've been lucky to get away with 1 win, so I'm quite happy to go in as underdogs.
Deering brought up 300 first-grade games this season, but it's a veteran from University that could return to haunt West tomorrow. At 43, Peter Sweeney still more than holds his own and is part of a talented lineup.
Peter Sweeney, very quick player, wealth of knowledge, and on his day, very dangerous player. We'll have to watch him and mark him very carefully tomorrow.
West fullback Sean Sparks remains under an injury cloud, while in the women's final at 1 o'clock, minor premiers Novos take on Oxfords.
Debate rages in scientific circles about the genetic engineering of plants and food crops.
We've got speakers who are talking about the basic science of genetic engineering. We've got people who are saying from the other side that we have to look very carefully at conservation, we have to look very carefully at the effects that these genetically engineered plant crops may have on Australia now and in the future.
90 speakers from around Australia and overseas will present seminars at City Hall over the next 3 days. A youth science convention is being run in tandem with the Congress, with young minds vitally interested in the latest developments.
This is the grand final.
And what's the score?
Full time 74, doggies 1.
Every year, government authorities spend tens of thousands of dollars on high-impact advertisements designed to shock drivers into being more careful on the roads. But a Newcastle University researcher believes these very personal expressions of grief seen on many northern New South Wales roads have much more impact. Dr. Kate Hartig interviewed more than 300 motorists at a driver reviver station on a long weekend. Most females said they were affected by both the advertising and the roadside memorials. But with the men, the outcome was very different.
52% of males aged between 16 and 25 said that if they saw a roadside memorial, then yes, it did make them more cautious.
Over the last 5 years, 77% of fatal crashes in the Newcastle area alone have involved young men. It's a frightening statistic, and one which Dr. Hartig believes is relevant to her findings.
Quite a few of them actually said that when they saw it, they thought about a mate who had been killed in an accident.
Dr. Hartig believes many young men also reject the official line, which they see represented by the advertisements. Jodie McKay, NBN News. It's a black spot where many heavy vehicles have come to grief. At 6:30 this morning, the semi-trailer overturned on the Pacific Highway at Ashley's Hill, 5 kilometres north of Bulahdelah. It skidded more than 30 metres. The 24-year-old Queensland driver was killed instantly when his cabin was crushed by a guardrail.
Heavy vehicle drivers come under the same coverage. They just have to take care and respect that the road is bad and that the traffic's going to be heavy, especially over the next couple of weeks.
It's believed the driver was travelling too fast, and speed combined with wet conditions and grand final celebrations are believed to have caused a crash this morning on the Pacific Highway at Sandgate. 29-year-old Jeffrey France died when his small car slammed into a power pole. He was wearing a seatbelt but was thrown from the car on impact. And on Friday night, a 16-year-old learner driver died when the car she was in rolled at Martins Creek. Sergeant Terry Payne admits it's been a bad start to the holiday break and says if drivers don't take care, the coming long weekend could be even worse.
What we'd ask is people take their time, think about what they're doing. If they feel a bit tired, pull over and have a break.
Most disappointing for police, the number of people still not wearing seatbelts.
Even in around the town area, if a minor accident, if they're not wearing a seatbelt, they can be injured. And that's what we're trying to stop.
Fine-tuning is all that remains for the cast of My Fair Lady after months of preparations. It's the company's second big production of the year and is set to be a flamboyant performance of a much-loved classic. The cast includes a number of veterans who are making a special return to the stage for this fun-loving musical. Joe Pryor will play the role of Colonel Pickering after a 10-year break from theatre. He played Professor Higgins in the first production at Newcastle's Civic Theatre. Tanya Facer has the lead role as the feisty Eliza. My Fair Lady opens in the Town Hall on Friday night.
The Knights and Stockland joined forces for the first time earlier this season, with the property giant re-signing as Newcastle's major naming rights sponsor for next year. Included in the deal, a novel approach for the Knights to raise extra cash.
They have indicated to us that they are willing to give us a block of land at their new Maitland development, to which we'll be able to auction that off or run some sort of raffle or art union.
There was further good news for the Knights today, with stalwarts Tony Butterfield and Steve Crow opting to remain with the club for next season. Both have been injury-prone of late, prompting this response from the coach.
We're not issuing any sticks or crutches with the contracts. we just want to get them on the field.
The club will lose 6 players to Super League next season, with Nathan Barnes Parramatta bound. Really hopes to add to the major gains during his stay in England over the coming weeks, which will include a stopover in America, visiting universities and professional sporting organisations.
It's really a fact-finding mission. We're looking at all aspects, including marketing aspects. We'll bring as much information back as we possibly can to improve the professionalism of the club.
Fire officers found the man's body in the lounge room of the flat in the main street of Scone. They believe he was the sole occupant of the unit, but dental records will have to be used to positively identify him. The fire was noticed by a neighbour at around 2:15 this morning.
The male in the unit next door to the fire was awakened by smoke. He went to the burning unit but couldn't raise anyone.
Fire investigators and detectives were back at the flat this morning trying to work out what caused the blaze and why the man couldn't get out of the unit. At this early stage, they say there are no suspicious circumstances, although inquiries are continuing.
Reputations and imaginations are tested at the annual Hunter Salon Culinaire. 8 teams are judged for their preparation, presentation and of course taste and the nutritional value of their meals. There is a realisation in the industry that restaurant goers expect not only a good-looking meal but a good feed as well.
We've set it up as a restaurant scene and we're trying to get the general public to see what really goes on inside a kitchen.
The judges watch every move and join diners for the final taste test. This serving royal dumplings, venison fillets in rosebud sauce. For the more adventurous, try crocodile roulade with apricots marinated in brandy with caviar and champagne cream. While a little exotic, the dishes also have to be economical. Pepper's Guest House won the category of Best Establishment of the Hunter and Jamie Hunter from Pepper's the Best Chef. Best Apprentice was Andrew Bryson from Salamander Shores.
The Jack Newton Junior Classic is now in its second decade and continues to grow in stature.
Yes, well this year we've got 5 international teams and some 35 players from overseas with South Africa and Singapore joining for the competition for the first time this year.
They were joined by almost 200 other juniors from across Australia for the start of the 72-hole tournament on the windswept Cessnock course. In the Open boys, Simon Lacey, who had a magnificent 70, Jason King, defending champion Nigel Spence, and world junior champ David Gleeson are expected to challenge for the title. Tamworth's Ben Lockwood is also among the leading contenders and overcame problems with a putter to fire a 75. Curry's Andrew Wiper is in the 16s and had a 2-over par 74, while Gunnedar's Amanda Sutcliffe finished with an 85 to be 5 shots off the pace.
While it's quiet at the airstrip now, it could be a different story this time next year. There are 60 movements a day by light aircraft on this small runway. The plan is to double the length of the runway to 1,800 metres, which will see an increase to 80 movements a day.
Well, basically we're trying to help economic development in the region. A regional airport is very significant from an economic perspective. There's also some spin-offs in terms of development of lands associated with the airport as well.
But not everyone agrees the upgrading is a good thing. The plan has angered some Central Coast residents who have formed an action group. They claim the airport will be an environmental and planning disaster equal to the original Badgerys Creek proposal. The action group claims there are three main issues, including not being told about the facts, noise pollution, as well as environmental problems. Council has moved to soothe concerns, saying the Warnervale upgrading can't be compared with the controversial Sydney airport.
Well, it's a totally different situation. Badgerys Creek is planned to be a full international airport, carrying very large numbers of very large jets. This will only ever be a regional airport, something like Ballina or Coffs Harbour or something of that nature. Nothing at all like Badgerys Creek.
Council has signed legal agreements with a private developer for work to begin early next year. Amanda Bolger, NBN News. Wyong is a bustling shire thriving on economic and business development, but 10 years ago it was a different story.
I think it'd be fair to say we were just percolating and frustrated. The population growth was continuing, but we weren't keeping up with everybody and providing jobs and having enough employment opportunities locally.
The Central Coast has a high number of people who live in the area but commute to either Sydney or Newcastle for work.
I think there's about 35,000 on the Central Coast and 10,000 from the Shire. Now that's not good enough.
Over the last decade, Council has nurtured a number of major developments which will lead the Shire into the next century. Councillor Sheridan says a major objective is to generate more jobs on the Central Coast. The $180 million Westfield shopping complex will be opening next month and is the biggest single-storey retail centre in the country.
Wyong Shire would probably be the most progressive shire within the state of New South Wales, certainly outside of Sydney.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
Corey Yeager and his 4-year-old sister Cody go everywhere together. It was while they were exploring their neighbourhood yesterday that Corey fell into this pool. Cody realised she had to get help.
He slipped over in it and then I ran and told my dad.
And what did you say to your dad?
Matey's drowning.
The children's parents ran to the pool 2 doors from their Pelormain house.
He just got to the pool and he could see Corey floating underneath, so he dived in and grabbed him, brought him out, put him up the side of the pool and put him on the CPR position, and just all the water come flying out of his mouth.
Corey was rushed to hospital. He was released this morning. His mother has no doubt he would have died had it not been for little Cody's quick thinking. The neighbouring house has been abandoned for some months, and the pool, which was without secure fencing, has become a dumping ground. Soon after the incident, the real estate agent who handles the property repaired the fence and padlocked the gate. But Lorraine is angry that her children were exposed to such a hazard.
But it was Corey's tragedy that brought him around to do something about the fence, and I think that's slack.
Cessnock Council is investigating the incident. It says every pool in the area is being inspected. That, though, takes time. Those council officers, however, who went to the house late yesterday were surprised by the condition of the pool and how easily the children could reach it. Jodie McKay, NBN News. It was business as usual at the Tanambut News Agency this morning, but a few hours earlier it was a very different story. Neil and Sue Martin, who own the business in May Street, live upstairs. They were awoken at 5 o'clock by someone yelling.
I heard the car screech away and I heard Stuart yelling out and he rang the buzzer for upstairs. And he came running down, or Sue came down, I called the police and he said he'd been bashed.
Stuart Tilden had been loading papers into the back of a car. As he was being assaulted, another man stole the cash register which contained the day's float. It's believed one of them was also armed with a knife. Neil believes the men knew the business's routine. While they didn't get away with much money, Neil says the attack is something that won't be forgotten.
We sold a house and everything to get into business, and you've got mongrels come in and think they can take over your premises and your life. Well, there should be tougher laws against them.
Authorities are still not entirely sure how many houses are affected by lead contamination from the Pasminco smelter at Boolaroo, but they're ready to start work on an action plan for the clean-up. Homes where children show elevated blood lead levels will have priority.
The next thing in terms of refining the plan of management is to identify those houses, and then of course we'll need to talk to the parents involved and make appropriate arrangements.
Similar clean-ups have been undertaken in lead-affected areas at Broken Hill and Port Pirie, the painstaking remediation process costing about $10,000 per house. One concern is that the clean-up itself will stir up the lead dust, exposing residents to further risk.
In the case of the other areas, what has been done is that they've taken or suggested to families that they move out of the houses for a week or two while the work goes on.
The initial clean-up funding of $200,000 is unlikely to be spent this year, with community consultation expected to draw out the planning process till December at least. There should be some progress soon though, with interviews for the remediation project manager due next week.
Samples from pap smears are transferred onto a glass slide and examined under a microscope at a pathology lab. But the accuracy of the test can rely on the quality of the sample, the slide and human judgment. Newcastle's Hampson Pathology is conducting a clinical trial with new equipment designed by the giant US Roche Diagnostic Systems. The unit prepares and concentrates a sample, discarding unwanted and confusing elements. The improved slide is then loaded into a computer which locates the most interesting 120 cells from as many as 50,000 in each sample. Operators compare the procedure to trying to find a spelling mistake in a dictionary.
It actually goes and selects the most abnormal cells or spelling mistakes and then shows them to the cytotechnologist. Then the cytotechnologist makes the choice. Is that cell abnormal or is it not?
The automated test is carried out along with the manual test, offering a greater chance of picking up abnormal cells. So far in this trial alone, an extra 13 patients, which may have slipped through the safety net, have been identified.
700 patients are saved each year. Many don't have pap smears, but this machine is for those patients who have pap smears and their cancer isn't detected.
A lot of artists arrived today to deliver their works, ready for hanging in the Matara exhibition. The event has a different venue this year, the 600 or so paintings sharing the redeveloped Honeysuckle Railway sheds with the annual Matara Craft Extravaganza. The joint showing likely to bring bumper crowds. All the works are for sale, though you'll need deep pockets to afford this one. Curry artist George Meyer calls it Beauty Spot, and it's yours for $2 million.
We have an open exhibition, so we're open for everything and anything. An entry comes in with $2 million price tag. We'll accept the entry and it'll be very interesting. We'd love to sell it because the commission on that will have a great Christmas party.
The week-long Matara exhibition officially opens tomorrow night. It'll provide a meditative retreat for those attending the Foreshore Festival concerts, also on this weekend.
A 1.5 metre swell provided all finalists with plenty of long rides off Dixon Park Beach this afternoon. Favourite for the 8-foot title was defending champion Peter Sharp from the Central Coast, but he was pitted against some experienced local talent in the 6-man final. The one that impressed the judges early was the man in red, Peter Cornish, a former shortboard state champion. He was able to capture several high-scoring waves, eventually outpointing Craig Deeks, Gary Burden and Sharp, who finished in 4th place. The Central Coast Danny Bond was one of several to snap his board over the weekend and failed to stop him in his final. He borrowed a board and surfed to victory in the over 45s division. 12 months ago, an emotional Wayne Russell returned home from Bathurst a shattered man. A high-speed crash left his car in tatters, but unperturbed he vowed to return to conquer the mountain. True to his word, he completed that promise yesterday, his 15th placing making him one of the leading privateers.
The tears were coming down at Conrod, just to see the checkered flag was just unbelievable. I get goosebumps still talking about it.
But it wasn't all smooth running for Russell and co-driver Rick Shaw. The Novocastrian racing team Commodore wasn't able to join the race until 20 laps into the event after suffering mechanical problems, prompting fears of another non-finish.
So we actually missed the start, and the boys just did a fantastic job and put the diff back together and a new tail shaft in and fixed everything, and 20 laps later we were in the race.
The performance has ensured that Russell will once again return to tame Mount Panorama, but in the meantime he's set to pursue a career in sprint cars.
The sprint cars, yeah, definitely new, but should be a lot of fun.
Moss Rocket making it 6 wins from 16 starts and taking his prize money to over $500,000. Thompson guided the 7-4 favourite across the line ahead of Sword and Ruslan. To the Stanfox Stakes for 3-year-olds, with the John Hawkes trained Octagonal starting an odds-on favourite. At 7-4 on, the punters pick Octagonal, winning the battle with stablemate Encores, while Ravada hung on for third. Octagonal likely to clash again with Al Mazke in the Caulfield Guineas on Saturday week.
Nigel Reid has walked across the UK and the United States and is now heading up Australia's east coast to complete an 8,000-kilometre journey dedicated to the memory and suffering of his daughter Zoe. The 11-year-old died of cystic fibrosis last year.
Mainly the thoughts of my daughter and what she went through and the courage that she displayed over the 11 and a half years. And my goal just keeps me going, and that's to get back to Brisbane and to build a respite and hospice centre so some families can benefit. It's that really that drives me along.
Right. Nigel is speaking with Lions clubs along the way, hoping they'll take up the worldwide campaign for respite care for children and their carers. In her short life, Zoe underwent thousands of hours of therapy and consumed hundreds of thousands of tablets as she fought respiratory problems, finally succumbing to asthma and cystic fibrosis.
She never complained, she just got on with her life, and I think from that I've learnt the value of taking every day, a day at a time.
For more than 30 years, the Newcastle Rugby League has had 10 teams. That could be about to change with the introduction of sides from the Central Coast, Upper Hunter and Foster Tuncurry.
The ideal scenario would be 16 sides in the competition, split into two zones, the north and south, to eliminate travel, then a cross playoff in the semi-finals.
A Newcastle Rugby League Premiership review meeting tonight will look at the possibility of revamping the competition. This year's grand final between Curry and West drew 15,000 people, a boost on previous years. But the NRL wants to maintain interest in the game. The competition has lost fans to the Knights, and the possible introduction of Super League could divide gate takings even further.
It's going to make it very, very tough for the Newcastle Rugby League if they do get up and running. We'll fight very, very hard to make sure we've got the best product we can possibly put on the paddock, and hopefully the people come and watch us.
While the NRL is confident teams like Central Charlestown and Waratah Mayfield would be in a new competition, they may struggle in a higher quality grade. Peter Ryan, NBN News.